Popular culture portrays the Dark Ages as a complete historical void, an era when Rome's brilliance faded and Britain descended into utter barbarism and ignorance. But the truth reveals this was actually one of Britain's most intriguing and transformative periods. Let me show you exactly what daily life entailed during this misunderstood time. If you're enjoying these historical insights, I'd be grateful for a like or subscription. I'm genuinely curious about our global audience. Drop a comment with your location and current time. It's fascinating to imagine people worldwide drifting asleep to these stories. Now, let's journey back to post-Roman Britain. Brace yourself, it's going to be quite an adventure. First, get comfortable. Seriously, adjust your pillows and pull up that blanket, because you'll want to be cozy for where we're headed. Congratulations! You've just awakened in Britain circa 410 AD. The crude wooden shutters in your room barely block the gray morning light as you blink awake. Nothing like your modern blackout curtains. These primitive slats let in chilly drafts of damp air. You're lying on a straw-stuffed mattress that bears no resemblance to your memory foam bed. The rough-spun linen sheet beneath you scratches against your skin, while the heavy woolen blanket provides warmth despite its itchiness. Your breath forms visible clouds in the cold air. April mornings in post-Roman Britain remain bitterly cold. The central hearth's fire died overnight, and no one has revived it yet. You sit up cautiously, careful not to disturb others. Your two younger siblings sleep nearby on simple pallets, while your parents stir in the adjacent room. Your family enjoys relative privilege, living in what was once a modest Roman villa. Not some governor's grand estate, but a comfortable home built in Roman style by your great-grandfather who served as a minor provincial official. But Rome has vanished now. The legions departed last year after Emperor Honorius essentially told Britain to fend for itself. Some cling to hopes of Rome's return, while others accept this as permanent. Rising from bed, your bare feet meet cold stone floors. The once beautiful Bacchus mosaic now shows multiple cracks beyond repair, as skilled artisans have disappeared. You've lived all 16 years in this house, yet it feels fundamentally different now. The once gleaming white plaster walls bear soot stains from winter fires. The hypocaust heating system hasn't functioned properly in years, its maintenance knowledge lost. Splashing icy water from a ceramic basin on your face shocks away lingering sleep. Then comes your morning dental routine, scrubbing teeth with a frayed twig, maintaining hygiene practices even as Roman refinements fade. Outside, a rooster's crow announces the day's start. You dress in a simple wool tunic dyed muted blue with woad, fastening a cloak at your shoulder with a bronze brooch, your most prized heirloom from your grandmother. Your worn but serviceable leather shoes get secured with calf ties to keep your trousers in place. Entering the main room, you find your mother expertly coaxing flames from the hearth's embers. Without looking up, she assigns your task. The bread needs kneading. Your father's already inspecting the fields, she adds. Nodding, you move to the wooden table where dough awaits in a pottery bowl. This morning ritual represents your new reality. Tasks once handled by servants now fall to family members since Rome's departure took the household staff too. As your hands work the coarse barley rye dough, a far cry from the fine wheat flour once imported from Gaul, your mother mentions disturbing news. They're saying more Saxons landed near Dubris. You ask if they came as traders or raiders, though you already suspect the answer. Germanic peoples have crossed for generations, initially traders, increasingly raiders. Raiders, she confirms with a sigh. Aetius says they burned 3 farmsteads before the local militia drove them back. Aetius, the village smith, always gets news from travelers passing through the remains of the vicus near the old Roman fort. When you ask if your father will join the militia again, you try to mask your concern. Last autumn's 2-week coastal patrol left him gaunt and exhausted. After planting, your mother replies, "The world changes, but we still need to eat." This encapsulates your new existence. Rome brought centuries of stability and prosperity, but now you're caught between worlds. No longer truly Roman, not yet whatever Britain is becoming. Sunlight breaks through clouds, illuminating the overgrown courtyard where your father works with the family ox and wooden plow. From the villa's vantage point, you see the abandoned Roman town's crumbling walls to the east, the encroaching forest to the west reclaiming Roman-cleared land, and to the north, the old fort now occupied by Vortigern's men. Some say this self-styled protector of southern Britain hired Saxon mercenaries against Pictish raiders, while others whisper he's making himself king. Your mother interrupts these thoughts, handing you a wax-sealed clay bottle containing her herbal remedy for your father's aching back, metasweet, and willow bark steeped in honey and ale. Shaping the dough into a scored round loaf, you notice the difference from your grandmother's intricate Roman patterns. As your mother slides it into the clay oven, she promises it will be ready upon your return and warns against dawdling. Stepping outside, you pass the derelict bathhouse, its lead pipes salvaged years ago when taxes became unbearable. Now your family bathes in the stream during summer and makes do with basin washes in winter. The once orderly Roman gardens run wild, though useful plants like thyme and rosemary persist among the weeds. The path down to the fields is uneven, worn by generations of footsteps, but now cracked with neglect. Your father straightens as you approach, pressing a hand to his lower back, his posture stiff from hours bent over the plow. At 40, he looks older than he should, his face lined from seasons spent under the sun, his once smooth hands now rough with calluses. Before Rome left, he was a tax collector, educated, fluent in Latin and Greek, capable of calculating complex sums in his head. Now, he's learning to be a farmer, his pale skin weathered by the elements, his body adapting to labor it was never meant to endure. Mother sent this, you say, handing him the clay bottle. He takes a grateful sip, grimacing at the bitter taste. The barley field is nearly done, he mutters, gesturing to the freshly turned earth behind him. Tomorrow, we start on the rye. Will it be enough? You ask, unable to keep the worry from your voice. Last winter was harsh, the stored grain running out weeks before spring. Your father's expression hardens. It has to be. Rome won't feed us anymore. This is the lesson everyone is learning now, self-reliance. The vast trade networks that once brought olive oil from Spain, wine from Italy, and grain from Egypt have collapsed. What you can't grow or make yourself, you do without. As if sensing your thoughts, your father adds, Aetius says a merchant came through yesterday from Gaul. He had salt and spices to trade. Your heart lifts at the mention of salt, precious now for preserving meat through winter. What did he want in exchange? Metal, tools, weapons. Your father shrugs. Things we can't spare. You nod. The economy has shifted, reverting to barter. Roman coins still circulate among locals, but they're growing scarce, and many distrust them anyway. A shout from the settlement interrupts your conversation. You both turn to see a rider galloping along the old Roman road, dust rising behind him. Stay here, your father orders, his voice sharp. He hands you the ox's lead and strides toward the road, one hand resting on the knife at his belt. You watch as he intercepts the rider, their conversation brief but tense. When your father returns, his face is ashen. Raiders, he says simply. Not Saxons this time. Picts from the north. They've broken through near the old wall and are moving south. How many? Enough. He takes the ox's lead from you. Go back to the villa. Tell your mother to pack food and blankets. We may need to shelter in the old fort tonight. You hesitate. And you? I'll bring the ox in and join you shortly. Go now. You run back to the villa, your mind racing. This is the new reality of Britain without Rome's protection. Threats from every direction. Saxons from the east, Picts from the north, Irish from the west. The old Roman defenses are crumbling, and the local militias are poorly organized, barely equipped. When you burst into the main room, your mother takes one look at your face and understands. She doesn't waste time with questions, immediately calling your siblings and gathering essentials. Take only what we need for a few days, she instructs, her voice calm, but her movements quick. And bring your grandfather's old sword from behind the grain bins. This surprises you. The sword, a Roman gladius your grandfather carried as an auxiliary officer, hasn't been used in years. Father has his knife, you say. Your mother's eyes harden. A knife may not be enough this time. You retrieve the sword, wrapped in oiled cloth to protect it from rust. It's heavier than you expected, the bronze hilt worn smooth from your grandfather's grip. You've never trained with it. Such skills seemed unnecessary in your lifetime. Now, you wish you had. Outside, shouts rise from the settlement. Smoke curls from a distant farmstead. Your younger siblings, a boy of 10 and a girl of 7, watch wide-eyed as your mother stuffs bread, dried meat, and apples into a cloth sack. "What about our things?" your sister asks, clutching her wooden doll. "We'll come back for them," your mother assures her, though her eyes meet yours over the child's head. You both know this isn't guaranteed. The world is changing. The certainties of Roman life, the laws, the trade, the relative peace, are gone. Now, you must adapt as your ancestors did before Rome came. The knowledge is there in your blood, passed down through generations of Britons who lived off this land long before the legions arrived. You fasten the sword belt around your waist, adjusting it to fit your slimmer frame. It feels foreign yet somehow right, as if your grandfather's spirit approves. Your father appears in the doorway, breathless. "They're closer than we thought. No time for the fort. We need to hide in the old storage caves by the stream." These caves, really just deep cellars dug into the hillside, were once used to store grain and wine in the villa's prosperous days. Damp and uncomfortable, but well hidden beneath thick vegetation. As your family hurries from the villa, you glance back at the only home you've ever known. The morning sun illuminates the weathered tile roof, the crumbling plaster walls, the remnants of Roman luxury slowly returning to the earth. Will you ever see it again? Will your children remember that this was once part of the greatest empire the world had ever known? For now, such questions must wait. Britain is entering its dark age, not because knowledge has disappeared, but because the old certainties are gone. Survival comes first. Learning to blend Roman ways with ancient British knowledge will determine whether your family thrives or perishes in the decades to come. As you follow your parents down the overgrown path toward the stream, you realize you stand at a turning point in history. The Roman chapter of Britain's story is ending. What comes next will be written by people like you, caught between worlds, carrying fragments of the past into an uncertain future. Behind you, smoke rises from scattered farmsteads. To the north, dark figures move against the horizon, drawing ever closer. You adjust the unfamiliar weight of your grandfather's sword and hurry to catch up with your family. Whatever comes next, you'll face it together, as Britons always have. The clouds part briefly, sunlight illuminating the path ahead. For a moment, it feels like a sign, not from the Christian God your mother prays to, nor from the old Roman gods, but from something older still, the spirit of Britain itself, enduring beyond empires and invasions. This land has seen peoples come and go. It will survive this transition too. And so, perhaps, will you. The small settlement of Xton emerges from the morning mist like a stubborn memory. 40 years have passed since Rome abandoned Britain, and the world has transformed around this cluster of wooden buildings nestled alongside the stone ruins of what was once a minor Roman trading post. You stand at the edge of the village common, your breath visible in the crisp morning air. Smoke curls lazily from thatch-roofed houses, rising in delicate spirals against the pale sky. The village stirs to life around you, a far cry from the orderly Roman world your grandparents described. Half a century after the legions departed, Britain has fractured into a patchwork of small communities. Some cling stubbornly to Roman ways, others embrace older traditions. Many, like Xton, have forged something new from the fragments of the past. You are the grandchild of that Romano-British family who fled the villa 2 generations ago. Their desperate flight through the countryside ended here among survivors who banded together for protection. What began as a temporary refuge has become home. Elfwin, stop daydreaming and help me with these loaves. The voice snaps you from your thoughts. Your Aunt Brianna kneels by the communal bread oven, sweat glistening on her forehead despite the chill. The stone oven, built with rocks scavenged from Roman ruins, serves the entire eastern portion of the village. Each family takes turns maintaining the fire and supervising the baking. You hurry over, using a long wooden paddle to retrieve several round loaves from the oven's depths. The bread is a vast improvement from the coarse barley loaves your ancestors ate in those first chaotic years. This is proper wheat bread, proof that your community has achieved some stability. Mind you don't burn yourself, Brianna cautions, though her tone is affectionate. At 16, you're nearly considered an adult, trusted with important tasks, yet still learning village life's complexities. The aroma of fresh bread draws children like moths to flame. Two small boys appear, the tanner's sons, their clothes carrying the distinctive smell of their father's trade. Go on with you, Brianna scolds, though she slips each child a crust. Tell your mother her loaves will be ready by midday. As the children scamper off, you stack the finished bread in a willow basket. These loaves will feed 3 families today. Tomorrow, another group will use the oven. This system of shared resources has evolved naturally, allowing survival despite limited tools and knowledge. Take these to Elder Oswine's house, Brianna instructs, handing you 2 linen-wrapped loaves. He's hosting those coastal traders for midday meal. You nod, understanding the importance. Oswine is the village headman, elected for his wisdom. The coastal traders bring precious salt, metal tools, and occasionally exotic goods. Maintaining good relations is crucial for Xtan's survival. The village has grown since its founding. What began as a circle of hastily built shelters now comprises about 30 households arranged around common grazing land. Some buildings, like Oswine's Hall and the small wooden church, have proper plank walls and wooden shingles. Most homes are simpler wattle and daub constructions with thatched roofs, humble but effective against Britain's damp climate. As you walk through the settlement, you pass women preparing meals, men repairing tools, children chasing chickens through the mud. Life here bears little resemblance to the Roman villa your grandparents described. Yet traces remain. Iron cooking pots passed down through generations, the occasional glass bead or bronze brooch worn as jewelry, Latin words woven into daily speech. Outside Elder Oswine's hall, you pause to straighten your woolen tunic, dyed blue with woad, and adjust your linen headscarf, the mark of an unmarried woman. Your clothing is hand-spun and hand-dyed, the patterns on your belt blending Roman geometric designs with older British motifs, a perfect reflection of your mixed heritage. You knock on the wooden door frame. The door stands open to catch the spring breeze. Inside, voices murmur in conversation. Enter, calls Oswine's deep voice. The hall's interior is dim after the bright morning light. A central hearth provides warmth and cooking heat, its smoke escaping through a hole in the roof. At the far end sits Oswine on a carved chair, one of the few such pieces in the village. Opposite him sit 3 strangers, their sea-weathered faces marking them as the coastal traders. Their clothing differs from village attire, leather boots rising to the knee, woolen cloaks fastened with elaborate brooches, sealskin caps that seem exotic to inland eyes. Ah, Elfwin, Oswine says, rising. Brianna's bread, I presume? Perfect timing. You present the loaves with a slight bow, a remnant of formal manners still taught by village elders. Oswine takes them with a nod. Stay a moment, he says. These men bring interesting news from the east. The oldest trader, a grizzled man with a beard streaked gray, studies you. Your grandfather was Roman, wasn't he, girl? The question catches you off guard. My great-grandfather served Rome, you answer carefully. But we are Britons. He nods, seemingly satisfied. They're coming again, you know. Not Romans this time. Saxons, Angles, Jutes. More every season. They've established kingdoms in the east. This isn't entirely news. For years, reports have trickled in of Germanic settlers establishing permanent territories along Britain's eastern shores, first as raiders, now as migrants bringing families to claim land. Do they threaten the coast road? Oswine asks, his voice betraying concern. The ancient track connecting Xtan to the sea is the village's lifeline for trade. Not yet, the trader replies. But they're pushing westward. The British kingdoms fight back in some places. In others, they make accommodations, trading land for peace. You listen intently, understanding the implications. Stan exists in a precarious balance, too small to defend itself against determined attack, relying on remoteness and good relations with neighbors for protection. There's a warlord rising among the Britons, another trader adds dramatically. Some call him Ambrosius. Others use a different name, Artorius. A murmur passes through the room. Even you have heard whispered stories of this war leader supposedly uniting British resistance against the Saxon advance. Tales for children, scoffs the youngest trader. What matters is that goods still flow along the old roads, and silver still buys what a man needs. This pragmatic assessment breaks the tension. Oswine laughs. Indeed, and you'll find Stan has goods worth your silver. Our tanner's work excels this season, and our wool is exceptionally fine. As the conversation turns to trade, you take your leave. Oswine catches your eye and nods slightly, a dismissal, but also acknowledgement of your presence during this important exchange. As the headman's carpenter, your father will hear all details tonight. Outside, the village hums with midday activity. The smell of cooking food mingles with the earthy scents of livestock and turned soil. Spring planting is underway in the fields beyond the settlement, where strips of land are allocated to each family according to need and ability. You head toward the small stream that provides Stan with fresh water. Several women are already there filling buckets and exchanging gossip. Among them is Edith, whose family trades in wool and whose brother has been showing interest in you at recent gatherings. Elfwyn, she calls, waving you over. Is it true the coastal traders are at Oswine's? You nod, joining her at the water's edge. They bring news of Saxon kingdoms in the east. Edith's eyes widen. My father says we should be concerned. Others think they'll never push this far inland. Oswine seemed worried. You admit quietly. But the traders still travel the coast road without trouble. As you help Edith fill her bucket, your thoughts drift to the wider world beyond Stan. Your grandparents spoke of a Britain fully integrated into a vast empire, with roads connecting it to distant Rome. That world is gone, yet people adapt. New connections form. New communities rise from the old. A horn blast interrupts your musings, two sharp notes echoing across the settlement. Everyone freezes. Two blasts mean visitors, not danger. A single prolonged note would send men reaching for weapons. Travelers on the North Road, someone calls. Curious villagers move toward the entrance. Visitors are uncommon in spring when communities focus on planting. They usually bring news, trade goods, or occasionally new skills. 7 travelers appear, leading 4 pack horses. Their long robes and wooden staffs, topped with simple crosses, mark them as monks from the north. Christianity has maintained a foothold in Britain since Roman times, though practices vary widely. Stan's small wooden church serves both Christians and those who maintain older beliefs, the village priest negotiating a pragmatic balance between traditions. The monks approach Oswine. To everyone's surprise, he gestures toward the church and leads them in that direction. What do you suppose they want? Edith asks. Perhaps they seek to establish a new monastery, you suggest. I've heard they favor remote places. The idea is both intriguing and concerning. Monasteries often become centers of learning and craft, but they also represent change. And change has not always been kind to Britain in recent memory. As the crowd disperses, you carry your bucket of fresh water home. Your family's dwelling is modest but comfortable, a rectangular wattle-end daub structure with a packed earth floor covered with fresh rushes. Your mother stirs a pot of pottage hanging over the central hearth, a thick stew of barley, beans, and spring greens. The bread is ready, you tell her, and monks have arrived from the north. Monks? She looks up with interest. Like many in Stan, your mother practices a blend of Christian devotion and older traditions, wearing a jet cross alongside an amber amulet inherited from her grandmother. I wonder if they bring books. Books are rare treasures now. Your family owns none, though your father can read the Latin script taught by his father. Literacy has declined since Roman times, but hasn't disappeared entirely. In Stan, the priest maintains a few precious manuscripts, teaching children their letters with sticks in the dirt. They spoke with Oswine and went to the church. You explain, helping prepare the meal. Your younger brothers will return hungry from the fields where they're helping with planting. Your father has been working since dawn repairing the village palisade, the simple wooden fortification encircling Ston that represents another adaptation to post-Roman life. As you work, you reflect on how your community has created a new way of life from fragments of the past. Roman farming techniques blending with older British methods, Christian prayers mingling with pre-Roman planting rituals, Latin words seasoning daily speech. This is the reality of Dark Age Britain, not a descent into barbarism, but a time of adaptation, of holding on to useful knowledge while developing new solutions. The Roman chapter of Britain's story has ended. What happens next will be written by people like you and your neighbors in Ston. Ordinary people building the foundations of medieval England through daily acts of survival and perseverance. The last rays of sunset cast long shadows across the valley as you make your way along the winding path. 100 years have now passed since the Romans departed Britain, and the island has transformed once again. The wooden cross atop the small stone church catches the fading light, gleaming like a beacon against the deepening blue sky. This is Lindisfarne, Holy Island, connected to the Northumbrian mainland by a narrow causeway that disappears beneath the tide twice daily. It's a fitting symbol for Britain in this age of transition, sometimes connected to the wider world, sometimes isolated, existing in the liminal space between old ways and new. You are Cuthbert, a novice at the island's monastery. At 17, you've spent 3 years under the monk's guidance, learning letters, prayers, and the crafts that sustain this isolated community. Your family, humble shepherds from the nearby hills, gave you to the church as a boy, hoping to secure you a better life than they could provide. The wicker basket on your arm is heavy with freshly collected eggs from the monastery's hens. These will become part of tomorrow's simple breakfast eaten after dawn prayers. Your woolen robe, undyed and rough spun, keeps the evening chill at bay as you hurry to complete your chores before Vespers. Behind you rises the monastery itself, not the grand stone structure future generations will build, but a collection of simple buildings constructed in the Irish tradition brought by Bishop Aidan. The main church is stone, but the living quarters, workshops, and refectory are timber-framed with wattle and daub walls and thatched roofs. Smoke rises from the kitchen hearth where Brother Oswald prepares the evening meal, fish stew and barley bread. As you approach the monastery gate, you pause to observe a group of local people gathering near the small wooden cross marking the boundary between sacred enclosure and secular world. They've brought offerings, fish, honey, a wheel of cheese, seeking blessings for a sick child bundled in his mother's arms. Brother Ethelwald meets them, his tonsured head bowed in greeting. Though the monastery follows Roman Christian practices, the monks understand the importance of serving the local population, many of whom blend Christian devotion with older beliefs. The healing prayers Ethelwald offers combine scripture with traditional herbal knowledge. This pragmatic approach has served the church well as Christianity gradually spreads across Britain. The old gods aren't directly challenged, but slowly absorbed. Their sacred sites repurposed, their festivals given Christian significance. The people's need for divine intercession, for healing and protection, remains constant even as the names they invoke change. You slip past the gathering and enter the monastery grounds. In the central courtyard, several brothers complete their daily tasks. 2 elderly monks carefully tend the herb garden that provides both food and medicine. A middle-aged brother repairs a damaged fishing net. 3 novices your age scrub wooden platters with sand in preparation for the evening meal. Cuthbert, the voice belongs to Brother Bede, the monastery's teacher and your mentor. Though only 30, Bede's reputation for learning extends beyond Lindisfarne. He beckons you toward the small wooden hut that serves as the scriptorium. Inside, precious manuscripts line crude wooden shelves, fewer than 20 volumes in total, each representing untold hours of labor. A slanted writing desk occupies the center of the room, where a half-finished page awaits completion. I have something to show you, Bede says, carefully unrolling a piece of vellum. A letter from Canterbury. The Archbishop seeks information about our practices here in Northumbria. The implications are significant. Since Augustine's mission to Kent a generation ago, Roman Christianity has been advancing northward, sometimes clashing with the Irish traditions that took root in northern Britain. The Synod of Whitby lies in the future, but already tensions simmer between different Christian traditions. Are we to change our ways? You ask, setting down your basket of eggs. Bede's expression remains neutral. Knowledge flows in many directions. Rome brings certain traditions, yes, but they learn from us as well. The important work is preserving wisdom, not arguing over the date of Easter. This pragmatism characterizes much of life in 7th century Britain. After generations of upheaval, practical solutions take precedence over dogmatic purity. Communities adapt, incorporating useful elements from different traditions while discarding what doesn't serve their needs. The monastery bell sounds, calling the brothers to evening prayers. You follow Bede from the scriptorium, joining the procession of dark-robed figures moving toward the small stone church. Inside, tallow candles cast flickering shadows across whitewashed walls decorated with simple painted crosses. The brothers arrange themselves in rows, the abbot at their head. The evening office begins, Latin prayers chanted in the distinctive cadence that characterizes Northumbrian monasticism. Though you understand only portions of the ancient language, the rhythm is soothing, creating a sense of connection to something larger than individual lives. Through the open door, you see the sky darkening over the North Sea, stars appearing one by one. On clear nights like this, it's said the holy men can see all the way to Iona, where Columba established the monastery that birthed your own community. The sea connects rather than divides, carrying not just physical goods but ideas, beliefs, and practices between Ireland, Britain, and the continent. After prayers comes the evening meal, eaten in silence as one brother reads aloud from Scripture. Tonight's reading tells the story of loaves and fishes, appropriate accompaniment to the simple fish stew served in wooden bowls. You eat mindfully, aware that many outside the monastery walls have less. For while monasteries are centers of learning and spiritual practice, they also serve crucial economic and social functions in this period. When harvests fail, it's often the monastery that feeds the hungry. When illness strikes, monks provide what medical care exists. When disputes arise, abbots frequently serve as mediators. The meal concludes with a prayer of thanks, and the brothers disperse to their evening tasks. Some will continue working by candlelight, copying manuscripts, repairing tools, preparing materials for tomorrow. Others will retire to pray or rest. As a novice, you're assigned to help in the kitchen, cleaning cooking vessels and banking the fire for morning. Brother Oswald supervises your work, his gnarled hands efficiently scraping food remnants into a bucket for the pigs kept behind the refectory. Though approaching 60, ancient by the standards of the age, he works with the energy of a much younger man. We have visitors coming tomorrow, he mentions as you scour a pot with sand and seawater. Pilgrims from the south seeking healing at Aidan's tomb. Such visitors are increasingly common as Christianity establishes deeper roots in Britain. A network of holy sites draws the faithful on journeys across the island and beyond. Some travel to atone for sins, others seeking miracles, still others driven by genuine spiritual hunger. Will they stay long? You ask, thinking of the extra bread that will need baking. A few days perhaps. The woman among them is quite ill. Oswald shakes his head. The journey itself may prove too much for her. Travel in 7th century Britain remains difficult and dangerous. Roman roads still exist, but suffer from decades of neglect. Bridges have collapsed, sections have washed away, and in some places forest has reclaimed the ancient thoroughfares. Still, people move about the island more than casual observation might suggest. Traders, missionaries, pilgrims, and occasionally armies crisscrossing the landscape. Your work complete, you step outside into the full dark of early evening. The monastery is quieting now, brothers retiring to the dormitory for the night's rest before matins calls them to prayer again in the pre-dawn hours. A few candles still burn in the church where the abbot and senior monks continue their devotions. At the edge of the monastery grounds, you pause to look toward the mainland. Pinpricks of light mark the fishing village that has grown alongside the religious community. Humble homes housing those who serve the monastery in various capacities. Boatmen who ferry visitors and supplies. Shepherds who tend the monks' flocks. Craftspeople who assist with building and repairs. This symbiotic relationship between secular and religious communities characterizes much of Britain in this period. Where Roman towns once dominated the landscape, new centers of population have emerged around monasteries, royal estates, and trading posts, settlements forming and growing not according to imperial planning but organic need. The night air carries the tang of salt and seaweed. Tomorrow the tide will isolate Lindisfarne until midday, creating the separation from worldly concerns that the early monks sought. Yet the monastery is far from self-sufficient. It relies on the mainland for many necessities, just as the mainland communities depend on the monastery's spiritual and practical services. A movement near the shore catches your attention, a small boat pulling up on the beach. Late visitors are unusual, especially with the tide turning. You watch as three figures disembark, one supporting another who seems barely able to walk. The third figure glances in your direction, and even in the dim light, you recognize Brother Egbert, who left 2 weeks ago to visit an ailing nobleman near Bamborough. The fact that he returns after dark with companions in obvious distress suggests urgency. You hurry to meet them, calling softly so as not to disturb the evening quiet. Brother Egbert, do you need assistance? His face when you reach him is drawn with exhaustion. Cuthbert, good. Help me bring them to the infirmary. The woman has fever, and the man was wounded defending her from robbers on the road. The woman is unconscious, her skin burning to the touch as you help carry her. The man limps beside you, one arm wrapped in a blood-soaked cloth. Neither wears the simple clothing of local people. Their garments, though travel-stained, are finely woven and dyed in rich colors. Who are they? You ask Egbert as you approach the small building that serves as the monastery's hospital. The Thane of Elfhurst and his sister, Egbert replies quietly. They journeyed to pray for their father, who lies near death. They were set upon by brigands 2 days' journey south of here. The information gives you pause. These are people of rank, members of the warrior aristocracy that has emerged in post-Roman Britain. The Thane, despite his injury, carries himself with the confidence of one accustomed to command. The sword at his side, temporarily peacebound with cord and respect for the holy site, marks him as a fighting man. Brother Wilfrid, the monastery's infirmarian, takes charge immediately upon your arrival. He directs you to prepare poultices of herbs while he examines the patients. The small room, illuminated by rushlights, smells of dried herbs and sickness. The wound is clean, Wilfrid pronounces after inspecting the man's arm. But the lady burns with fever. We must reduce the heat. What follows is a practical demonstration of 7th century medicine, a blend of herbal knowledge inherited from Roman physicians, folk remedies passed down through generations of British healers, and Christian prayers for divine intervention. Willow bark for pain and fever, honey to prevent corruption in the wound, compresses of cool water, invocations to saints known for healing miracles. The Thane watches anxiously as his sister is tended. Will she live? He asks finally, his accent marking him as someone from the southern kingdoms. Wilfrid's answer is measured. Her life is in God's hands. We will do what we can. This balance between human effort and divine will characterize the age. People work with the tools and knowledge available to them, while recognizing the limits of their understanding. Prayer and practical action go hand in hand. As you assist with grinding herbs for the healing poultices, you observe the interaction between the noble visitors and the monks. There is mutual respect despite their different stations. The monastery transcends traditional social boundaries, bringing together men from various backgrounds in common purpose. Some brothers, like the abbot, come from noble families. Others, like yourself, have humbler origins. Within the monastery walls, these distinctions matter less than in the outside world, though they never disappear entirely. The work continues well into the night. You're eventually dismissed to get some rest before matins, leaving Wilfred and Egbert to maintain their vigil over the sick woman. As you make your way to the dormitory, the monastery sleeps around you, a small island of order and purpose in a world still finding its way after the collapse of Roman authority. In your straw-filled pallet, listening to the soft breathing of other novices around you, you reflect on the day's events. The arrival of the noble siblings brings news from distant parts of Britain, reminders of the wider world beyond Lindisfarne's shores. Their journey, interrupted by violence, yet continuing in faith, mirrors Britain's own path through these uncertain times. The old Roman order has faded. New kingdoms rise and fall across the landscape. Different traditions, native British, Roman, Irish, Anglo-Saxon, blend and transform one another. Yet certain constants remain. People still seek meaning and purpose. Communities still form around shared needs and beliefs. Knowledge is still valued and preserved, though in new forms and institutions. As sleep claims you, your last conscious thought is of the manuscripts in the scriptorium, each page a bridge connecting past wisdom to future generations. In the morning, you'll resume your lessons, adding your small contribution to the continued transmission of learning through the so-called Dark Ages, which contain far more light than later histories might suggest. Outside, the tide rises around Lindisfarne, temporarily separating it from the mainland. The rhythm of water, like the rhythm of prayers that structure monastic days, provides continuity amid change, a reminder that even in times of transformation, certain patterns endure. Night falls quickly along the eastern coast of Northumbria. The last glow of sunset fades over the North Sea as your village prepares for darkness. 200 years have passed since the Romans left Britain, and life has found a rhythm in the kingdoms that emerged from that chaos. But now a new uncertainty stalks the coastline. They call them Norsemen, Danes, or simply the heathens. For 30 years, their dragon-proud ships have raided Britain's shores. First it was the monasteries, Lindisfarne, Jarrow, Iona, their treasures and scholars carried away across the sea. Now the raiders strike anywhere wealth might be found. Coastal villages like yours have learned to fear the horizon. You are Leofric, a fisherman's son in the settlement of Dunholm. At 19, you've already seen 3 raids in your lifetime. The first came when you were 10, a nightmare of burning thatch and screaming villagers that still haunts your dreams. The second, 3 years later, was less devastating. The warning came in time for most to flee inland with their valuables. The third, last summer, was repelled by the FYRD, the local militia, with help from the Lord's household warriors. Tonight you stand atop the wooden watchtower erected at the village's seaward edge. Your woolen cloak, dyed deep blue with woad, provides little protection against the sharp coastal wind. A small fire burns in a clay brazier beside you, more for light to signal within warmth. Your task is simple: watch the sea and sound the alarm if ships appear. Below, Dunholm settles into its evening routine. The village has grown over generations, now housing nearly 300 souls. Its buildings cluster along the shoreline and up the gentle slope behind, with fields and pastures beyond. Once primarily a fishing community, Dunholm has adapted to changing times. A wooden palisade now surrounds the settlement, and many houses have storage cellars dug deep into the earth, places to hide valuables or people when danger threatens. Smoke rises from cooking fires as families prepare evening meals. The smell of fish stew and barley bread drifts up to your position. Your stomach rumbles in response. Your own meal waits in your family's single-room house, where your mother and younger sisters likely wonder why you linger at your post when your watch ended at sunset. The answer stands beside you: Ethelflaed, daughter of the village reeve. Her presence at the watchtower is improper. Strictly speaking, an unmarried woman of 17 should be home with her family as darkness falls. But Ethelflaed has never much concerned herself with propriety. "There," she says suddenly, pointing north along the coastline. "Do you see it?" Your heart stutters as you follow her gesture, expecting to see the dreaded sail of a Norse longship. Instead, You make out the bobbing light of a torch moving steadily along the cliff path connecting Dunholm to the next settlement northward. Just a traveler, you say, releasing a breath you hadn't realized you were holding. Perhaps a messenger from Lord Eadwulf. Ethelflaed nods, disappointment evident in her posture. Unlike most villagers who pray daily to be spared another raid, she seems almost to court excitement. The daughter of the village's leading official, she's learned to read and write from the local priest and hungers for a world larger than Dunholm can provide. My father says the king has ordered more watchtowers built, she remarks, leaning against the rough wooden railing. And signal fires prepared on the headlands. Do you think it will help? You adjust the wood in the brazier, sending sparks swirling into the darkening sky. She shrugs. It might give more warning, but it won't stop them coming. This is the reality your generation has grown up with. The knowledge that safety is temporary, that the sea which provides your livelihood might any day deliver death to your doorstep. Yet life continues. Children are born. Crops are planted. Fish are caught. Marriages are arranged. I should go, Ethelflaed says finally. Father will be looking for me. You nod, trying to hide your reluctance to see her leave. The torchlight catches the bronze brooch at her shoulder, a family heirloom that once belonged to her grandmother. Its intricate knotwork shows both native British and Anglo-Saxon influences. Her russet woolen dress marks her family's prosperity. Your own clothing, while serviceable, lacks such finery. Will you be at the gathering tomorrow? She asks, pausing at the top of the ladder. If the fishing is good and we return early enough, you reply. The midsummer celebration is the largest festival in Dunholm's calendar, a blend of Christian observance and older traditions the church has never fully suppressed. She smiles, a quick flash of teeth in the gathering darkness. Until tomorrow. Then you watch her descend the ladder and cross the open ground toward the cluster of buildings. Her father's house is one of the largest in the village, a rectangular hall with walls of split timber rather than the wattle and daub used for most dwellings. As Reeve, Ethelric oversees the village's day-to-day governance on behalf of Lord Eadwulf, whose fortified estate lies half a day's journey inland. When she disappears from view, you turn your attention back to the sea. Night has fully claimed the horizon now, but the quarter moon provides enough light to make out where water meets sky. Your watch will last another hour until Sinrid the Tanner's son comes to relieve you. The North Sea stretches before you, a vast highway connecting Britain to Scandinavia, Frisia, and beyond. The same waters that bring raiders also carry trade. Amber and furs from the north, wine and fine metalwork from the south, ideas and information from everywhere. Dunholm may seem isolated, but it exists within a complex network spanning hundreds of miles. Movement along the shoreline catches your eye. A group of men pulling a fishing boat above the tide line. You recognize your father among them, which means their day's work is finally done. The boat is heavy, requiring 6 men to drag it across the pebbled beach to safety. Tomorrow, well before dawn, they'll push it back into the surf and row out to check the fishing nets. Your own boat, smaller, designed for 1 or 2 people, rests nearby. You'll take it out at dawn to check the crab pots laid in the shallows near the headland. This rhythm of work dictates life in Dunholm. The sea and seasons govern when to fish, when to plant, when to harvest. The church calendar determines when to feast, when to fast, when to celebrate or mourn. These patterns provide structure in uncertain times, connecting you to both ancestors and descendants. The sound of singing drifts up from the village, evening prayers from the small wooden church. Unlike the grand stone minsters in larger settlements, Dunholm's church is a humble structure built by the villagers themselves after converting from older beliefs. The priest, Father Cuthbert, serves not only Dunholm but 2 other nearby communities, rotating between them throughout the week. Christianity has taken firm root in Northumbria after centuries of gradual conversion. Yet older practices persist, particularly in matters of birth, death, and the turning of seasons. Tomorrow's midsummer celebration will include Christian prayers alongside traditions stretching back to pre-Roman times. The singing fades and the village grows quieter. families retreat into their homes for the night. In most households, the pattern is similar: a single room where all members sleep, with perhaps a curtain offering minimal privacy for parents. Beds consist of straw pallets raised slightly off the packed earth floor, with woolen blankets for warmth. In poorer homes, family members sleep close together for additional warmth. Wealthier households might have a proper wooden bedstead for the parents. Your own family's dwelling falls somewhere in the middle, modest but comfortable by the standards of the time. Your father is respected for his skill as a fisherman and boat builder. Your mother's weaving is sought after for its quality. Together, they've provided a stable life for you and your 3 younger sisters, even in these unstable times. Footsteps on the ladder announce Senrid's arrival to take over the watch. He climbs into view, a sturdy young man a few years older than yourself. "Anything?" he asks by way of greeting. "Just a traveler on the north path," you reply, gesturing toward your brazier. "The fire's freshly fed, should last your watch." He nods, taking your place at the railing. "They say a ship was spotted near Tymouth yesterday. Might have been Norse, might not." This is how information travels in your world: fragmentary, often delayed, impossible to verify without seeing for yourself. Yet such scraps are vital. A report of Norse ships to the north might mean nothing, or it might give precious hours of warning before an attack. "I'll tell my father," you say, wrapping your cloak tighter as you prepare to descend. Good watching. The climb down is familiar, each rung worn smooth by countless hands. At the bottom, you pause to look back at the watchtower silhouetted against the night sky. It's a simple structure, 4 posts supporting a platform, but it represents how your community has adapted to the Norse threat. 20 years ago, no such precaution existed. Now it's unthinkable to leave the coast unwatched. The path home takes you past the village's central area, where a large fire pit stands ready for tomorrow's celebration. Several men work by torchlight, arranging benches and tables borrowed from various households. Among them is the smith Wolfgar, hammering supports into place for the spit that will hold a roasting ox. Originally from Mercia, Wolfgar came to Dunholm 5 years ago after his own village was destroyed in a raid. His skills quickly made him indispensable, and he married a local widow within a year of his arrival. This pattern, displacement, movement, integration, plays out across Britain as communities are disrupted and reformed by violence and necessity. Leofric, Wolfgar calls, seeing you pass. "Is your father back?" "Just now bringing in the boat," you confirm. "Good. Tell him I finished the new oarlocks. He can collect them tomorrow." You nod and continue homeward. The smith's work is another example of adaptation. Traditional Anglo-Saxon smiths worked primarily with iron, but Wolfgar has incorporated techniques learned from examining captured Norse weapons and tools. The result is stronger, more flexible metalwork that serves the community's needs better than before. This exchange of knowledge, forced by conflict but beneficial nonetheless, occurs throughout Britain. Norse language seeps into local dialects. Norse ship designs influence local boat building. Even as communities resist raiders, they absorb elements of the very culture they fight against. Your family's house stands near the southern edge of the village. Like most dwellings in Dunholm, it's a simple rectangular structure with wattle and daub walls and a thatched roof. A small vegetable garden occupies the space behind, providing cabbage, onions, and beans to supplement the fish that forms your diet's basis. Light flickers through the single small window, a luxury many homes lack. The opening is covered with oiled parchment rather than glass, allowing some illumination while keeping out the worst weather. Glass remains rare and expensive, found only in churches and the homes of the wealthy. Inside, the scene is one of domestic tranquility. Your mother sits near the central hearth, spinning wool into thread using a drop spindle. Your youngest sister, only 6, has already fallen asleep on her pallet in the corner. The other 2 girls, 12 and 14, work on simple embroidery by the light of a rush lamp, a shallow dish of fish oil with a wick of twisted plant fiber. Your father sits on the room's only proper chair, mending a fishing net with practiced motions. He looks up as you enter, his weathered face creasing in a smile. Any ships on the horizon? He asks, the question only half joking. It's the same greeting he offers whenever you return from watch duty. None tonight, you reply, hanging your cloak on a wooden peg. But Sinrid says there was word of a sighting near Tynemouth. Your father's hands still momentarily, then resume their work. Could be traitors. Could be trouble. We'll know soon enough. This stoic acceptance characterizes your community's response to danger. There's no point dwelling on threats you can't control. Better to acknowledge them, prepare as best you can, and continue with life's necessities. Your mother rises to serve you dinner. A wooden bowl of fish stew thick with barley and the spring's first vegetables, accompanied by a chunk of dark bread. The family has already eaten, but your portion was kept warm near the fire. You eat hungrily, the day's work having burned through the midday meal hours ago. Father Cuthbert says we should pray especially for protection tomorrow, your younger sister mentions, looking up from her embroidery. He fears the celebration might draw attention if raiders are nearby. The midsummer gathering, with its bonfire and feast, could indeed be visible from the sea on a clear night. Yet canceling it would mean surrendering another small joy to fear, something the village has become increasingly reluctant to do. We'll post extra watches, your father says firmly, and have horses ready to carry warning to Lord Eadwulf if needed. But the celebration continues. Your mother nods her agreement. In her 40 years, she's seen the village overcome numerous hardships, not just raids, but also crop failures, sickness, and occasional disputes. Resilience doesn't mean ignoring danger, but rather refusing to let it define your existence. After eating, you join your father in net mending. The work is meditative, your fingers following patterns learned since childhood. This is how knowledge passes in your world, rarely through written texts, which remain precious and rare, but through direct transmission from parent to child, master to apprentice. Ethelric asked if you'd join the hunting party after tomorrow's fishing. Your father mentions casually. They're seeking deer for the Lord's table. The invitation is significant. Hunting parties are typically limited to the village's leading men and their chosen companions. That the reeve would include you suggests your standing in the community is rising. I'll go, you reply, trying to sound equally casual. Your father hides a smile, seeing through your attempted nonchalance. His daughter seems to find reasons to walk past our boat shed quite often these days. Heat rises in your face. Your interest in Ethelflaed is apparently less secret than you'd hoped. Though a match between you would be unusual given the difference in your family's status, it's not impossible. In these uncertain times, alliances form based on more than just inherited position. The conversation shifts to practical matters, whether expectations for tomorrow's fishing, repairs needed for the smaller boat, plans for smoking part of the catch for preservation. Soon your eyelids grow heavy, the long day taking its toll. Your sleeping pallet awaits in the corner opposite your sister's. Like theirs, it consists of a straw-filled mattress covered with woolen blankets. In winter, heavy furs provide additional warmth. In summer, the lighter coverings suffice. As you prepare for sleep, your father secures the door with a wooden bar, another adaptation to uncertain times. Your mother banks the fire, leaving just enough embers to easily rekindle it in the morning. One by one, the rush lamps are extinguished, leaving only the faint glow from the hearth to illuminate the room. Lying on your pallet, listening to your family's breathing gradually slow and deepen, you find your thoughts returning to the sea. What ships might cross the horizon tomorrow? Will they bring trade or terror? How many more watchtowers will your children need to build? Yet even as these questions swirl, fatigue claims you. Your last conscious thought is of Ethelflaed's smile in the torchlight, a brief moment of brightness in an age too often characterized by shadow. Outside, the moon casts silver light across Dunholm. The tide whispers against the shore. In the watchtower, Sinrid keeps his vigilant gaze on the horizon. And beyond that horizon, forces continue to shape the world. Norse expansion, shifting kingdoms, evolving beliefs. Their influences washing like waves against Britain's shores, gradually transforming the island and its people in ways that will echo through centuries to come. Morning light filters through the mist rising from the River Thames, illuminating the wooden buildings of Londonwick. Nearly 500 years have passed since the Romans departed Britain, and the island has transformed once again. What was once a scattering of competing kingdoms has begun to unify under the banner of Wessex. As Alfred's dream of a single English realm edges closer to reality, the settlement sprawls along the riverbank, its timber wharves busy with boats unloading goods from across the North Sea and beyond. This is no longer a place of mere survival, but a center of trade and governance that would astonish those who lived through the tumultuous centuries after Rome's fall. You are Edwin, a 30-year-old thane in service to King Athelstan, grandson of Alfred the Great. As the king's representative in Londonwick, you oversee the collection of tolls from merchants and ensure the king's peace is maintained in this vital trading hub. Your position reflects the increasing sophistication of governance in Anglo-Saxon England, a realm now administered through a network of loyal officials, written laws, and established procedures. Your woolen cloak, dyed a rich blue and fastened with an elaborate silver brooch, marks your status as you make your morning rounds along the waterfront. The sword at your hip is as much a symbol of authority as a practical weapon. Your boots, crafted from finely tanned leather, have never trudged behind a plow or stood in fishing boats. You were born to the emerging noble class, educated by the church, and raised to serve in the administration of a kingdom that grows more organized with each passing year. Good morning, Lord Edwin, calls a merchant as you pass his shop, its wooden shutters now open to display imported glassware from Francia. You acknowledge him with a nod, noting the respect in his address. Though not a lord in the highest sense, your position as royal thane commands deference from ordinary citizens. The street beneath your feet is no longer the muddy track of earlier centuries. Wooden planks form a raised walkway along the main thoroughfare, while smaller paths are covered with gravel and crushed shells. Drainage channels divert rainwater away from buildings. These simple improvements reflect a community with the resources and organization to invest in infrastructure, a far cry from the subsistence-focused settlements of post-Roman Britain. You pause at the river's edge, watching a large trading vessel being unloaded. The ship's design shows clear Norse influence, a shallow draft and wide hull optimized for both sea voyages and river navigation. Ironic, you reflect that the very people who once raided these shores have now contributed so much to Britain's maritime capabilities. The cargo reveals the extent of trade networks in this supposedly dark age. Barrels of wine from Francia, bolts of silk from Byzantium, amber from the Baltic, and spices from lands so distant few can name them accurately. Each item will be assessed and taxed according to the king's decree, the revenue helping to fund the governance of the emerging English state. A clerk approaches, clutching a wooden writing tablet covered in wax. Literacy, once the domain of only monks and the highest nobility, has expanded among those who serve in administration. The clerk himself is likely of common birth, educated in a church school to serve the growing bureaucracy. The merchant Oswald wishes to dispute his assessment. The clerk explains, pointing toward a red-faced man arguing with officials at the customs house. He claims the goods were damaged in transit and should be taxed at a lower rate. You sigh, mentally preparing for the first of many such negotiations that will fill your day. The rule of law, established through written codes and enforced by royal representatives, has replaced the arbitrary authority of local strongmen. But this system requires constant maintenance, judgment, and occasionally compromise. I'll speak with him, you tell the clerk. Bring the documentation from his last 3 shipments as well. Let's see if this damage is a pattern rather than misfortune. This attention to record keeping and precedent would have been foreign to your ancestors of even a century ago. But in Athelstan's England, governance increasingly relies on written records rather than memory alone, a transformation quietly revolutionizing how society functions. The morning passes in a blur of disputes resolved, taxes collected, and permissions granted. By midday, you retreat to the stone building that serves as both your residence and the center of royal administration in Londonwick. The structure stands 2 stories tall with glass windows on the upper floor, luxuries that announce the king's authority in physical form. Inside, your wife Edith oversees the household staff preparing the midday meal. Unlike the women of earlier centuries, she's not directly involved in food preparation or textile work. As the wife of a royal official, her role is supervisory, managing servants, maintaining social connections, and occasionally acting as your representative in your absence. The bishop's envoy arrived while you were at the waterfront. She informs you, adjusting the keys that hang from her belt, symbols of her authority over the household. He awaits you in the receiving room. The relationship between church and royal government has evolved over the centuries. No longer foreign missionaries in a pagan land, church officials now work alongside secular authorities, providing education, maintaining records, and lending moral authority to the king's rule. The line between religious and secular power often blurs, with senior clerics serving as advisors on matters far beyond spiritual concerns. The receiving room occupies most of the ground floor, a space designed to impress visitors. Painted wooden panels depict biblical scenes alongside images of King Athelstan's victories. A fire burns in the central hearth despite the mild spring weather, for comfort rather than necessity. The bishop's representative rises as you enter, a slender man in simple but high-quality robes. Lord Edwin. He greets you with a slight bow. Bishop Theodred sends his regards and requests your assistance in a matter of some delicacy. What follows is a careful dance of political negotiation. The church seeks royal support for a new monastery near Londonwick, while simultaneously asserting its independence in appointing the abbot. You, representing the king's interests, must balance respect for the church with protection of royal prerogatives. This conversation, conducted in Latin rather than the vernacular English of daily life, demonstrates how far Britain has evolved from the simple survival concerns of earlier centuries. Complex institutions now overlay the basic structures of society, creating a framework for governance that will ultimately form the foundation of medieval England. The negotiations conclude satisfactorily with compromises on both sides. The meal that follows is served on wooden plates for you and your guest, with bread trenchers for the household staff who join you at the lower end of the table. The food itself reflects both local production and imported luxuries, freshly caught river fish alongside preserved olives from Mediterranean shores. Local ale is served in glass cups from Francia. After the meal, you resume your duties with a visit to the workshops that cluster along the western edge of the settlement. Here, specialized craftspeople practice trades that have become increasingly sophisticated over the generations. The blacksmith no longer simply repairs agricultural implements, but crafts fine weapons and decorative metalwork. The potters will turn out vessels inspired by continental designs. The woodworker creates furniture with carved decorations showing both Christian and older motifs. In each workshop, apprentices learn from masters, ensuring the transmission of knowledge from one generation to the next. Some of these young people come from local families. Others have traveled from distant parts of the realm, drawn by Londonwick's reputation as a center of trade and craft. This mobility, people moving to pursue opportunities rather than simply fleeing from danger, marks another revolution in British society. The king will be pleased with these, you comment, examining finely crafted silver arm rings that will form part of the royal treasury. In Anglo-Saxon England, such treasures serve not merely as personal adornment, but as tangible symbols of the king's wealth and generosity. When Athelstan rewards loyal followers with gifts of precious metal, he strengthens the bonds that hold his kingdom together. The craftsman beams with pride. Will you tell His Majesty they were made here in Londonwick? My family came from Danish lands 3 generations ago, but we are English now, through and through. This casual comment highlights one of the most profound transformations of the period: the gradual integration of Norse settlers into the fabric of English society. The descendants of raiders have become citizens, their skills and traditions absorbed into the evolving culture of the island. The afternoon wears on as you inspect the town's defenses. Walls of earth reinforced with timber, considerably more substantial than the simple palisades of earlier settlements. Though Viking raids have decreased under Athelstan's strong rule, The memory of vulnerability remains embedded in both the landscape and the people's consciousness. A group of the king's household troops drill in an open area near the walls, practicing shield formations under the direction of a grizzled veteran. Their equipment reflects the standardization that has developed in England's military organization. Shields of uniform size, spears of similar length, helmets of consistent design. This is no longer a hastily assembled local militia, but a disciplined fighting force maintained in peacetime and deployed strategically when needed. As the sun begins its descent, you make your final stop of the day at the stone church near the center of Londonwick. Unlike the wooden structures of earlier centuries, this building is designed to last generations. Its walls are decorated with paintings depicting biblical scenes, the colors still vivid in the late afternoon light. Inside, a priest teaches a small group of boys to read and write, sons of merchants and minor officials preparing for roles in the increasingly literate administration of church and state. They practice on wax tablets similar to those used by your clerk, carefully forming Latin letters while simultaneously learning the concepts those symbols represent. You pause to observe, remembering your own education in a similar setting. The transmission of knowledge through writing has accelerated during your lifetime, with the king himself promoting literacy among his officials. Athelstan's court attracts scholars from across Europe, collecting manuscripts and commissioning new works that preserve and extend human understanding. This quiet scene of education represents a profound truth about the so-called Dark Ages of Britain. That darkness never fully descended, that light was preserved in communities of learning, and that knowledge continued to develop even as political structures transformed. The sun is setting as you return home, casting long shadows across Londonwick streets. Lamps are being lit in workshops and homes, extending productive hours beyond daylight. This simple innovation, the routine use of artificial light, symbolizes how far society has advanced from mere survival toward comfort and efficiency. Your household prepares for evening as you arrive, servants lighting rush lights and candles, setting the table for the evening meal, banking fires to maintain warmth through the night. The rhythms of daily life follow patterns established over centuries, yet the context has evolved dramatically. After the evening meal, shared with your wife and the senior members of your household, you retire to a small room on the upper floor that serves as your private study. Such personal space would have been unthinkable for all but the highest nobility in earlier centuries. Now it represents the increasing differentiation of living areas according to function, another quiet revolution in daily life. By candlelight, you review documents requiring your attention, records of taxes collected, reports from outlying areas, correspondence from the royal court. The governance of England increasingly happens through such written instruments rather than solely through personal presence and spoken commands. Later, in the bedchamber you share with your wife, you reflect on the day's events. Your bed, a proper wooden frame with rope supports and a mattress stuffed with wool rather than straw, represents another evolution in comfort. The linen sheets and woolen blankets are of finer weave than those available to your ancestors. Even the pillow beneath your head, a luxury once reserved for the highest elites, has become standard for someone of your station. The king's messenger arrived just before sunset. Edith mentions as she removes the pins from her hair. He brings news that Athelstan may visit Londonwick before midsummer. The information doesn't surprise you. The king maintains an active presence throughout his realm, traveling constantly to reinforce his authority through personal appearance. Yet such a visit requires extensive preparation, from securing adequate supplies to arranging suitable accommodations and entertainment. We'll begin preparations tomorrow, you reply, already mentally listing the tasks ahead. The guilds will want to present their finest work, and the church will expect appropriate donations. This casual reference to guilds, formalized associations of craftspeople with recognized authority over their trades, indicates another institutional development of the period. Such organizations provide structure and standards within their professions while also serving as vehicles for political representation and social support. As sleep approaches, your thoughts drift to the broader historical context of your life. You stand at the end of what later historians will call the Dark Ages and the beginning of the medieval period proper. The foundations of recognizable English society are taking shape around you. Common law, administrative structures, urban centers, specialized craft production, standardized currency, and increasingly centralized authority. Yet these developments didn't appear suddenly from nowhere. They emerged gradually through the centuries that followed Rome's departure, built by countless individuals adapting to changing circumstances, preserving useful knowledge while developing new solutions to evolving challenges. The people who lived through those supposedly dark centuries never saw themselves as languishing in some benighted era. They were simply living their lives, raising families, practicing trades, worshiping according to their beliefs, and contributing to communities that slowly, incrementally transformed into something new. As your consciousness fades towards sleep, you're unaware that you occupy a pivotal moment in Britain's history, a time when the fragmented kingdoms of post-Roman Britain have largely consolidated into a realm recognizable as England, when literacy and administrative sophistication have revived and expanded beyond Roman precedents, when architecture and craftsmanship have developed distinctive styles blending multiple cultural influences. You're equally unaware that future generations will look back on your era not as a continuation of darkness, but as the early light of medieval civilization, a society building the foundations of institutions and practices that will endure for centuries to come. Outside your window, Londonwick sleeps beneath a canopy of stars, the same stars that shone over Roman Londinium, over the first tentative Anglo-Saxon settlements, over Viking raiders and Christian missionaries. The river that flows past the settlement's wharves has witnessed the entire transition, carrying boats of changing design but similar purpose throughout the centuries. Within this continuity lies the true story of Britain's so-called Dark Ages, not a narrative of collapse and ignorance, but one of resilience and adaptation, of preserving what proved useful while innovating where necessary. The light of civilization never truly extinguished. It merely changed form, flickering sometimes, but always finding new fuel to sustain its flame. As sleep claims you fully, the rhythms of your breathing merge with those of your wife beside you, of your household around you, of Londonwick beyond your walls, of England stretching to horizons you've never personally witnessed. In this moment of unconsciousness, you embody the quiet persistence of human society through times of transformation, each generation building upon the foundations laid by those who came before, each individual living not in history, but in their own present moment. The first light of dawn creeps across the rolling hills of Wessex, gilding the thatched roofs of Winchester. 5 centuries have unspooled since Rome's legions marched away from Britain, and the island stands transformed beyond recognition. What began as Alfred's desperate defense against Viking invaders has blossomed under his grandson Edgar into a unified kingdom of laws, learning, and measured prosperity. The wooden palisades of earlier centuries have given way to stone walls, the scattered farmsteads to thriving towns, the war bands to disciplined armies. You are Wulfric, a thane in his 40th year, serving as Sheriff of Hampshire under King Edgar the Peaceable. Your morning begins as it always does, with the tolling of the monastery bell calling the faithful to prime. The sound echoes through the streets of Winchester, mingling with the clatter of carts bringing goods to market and the cries of street vendors hawking their wares. Your woolen tunic, dyed a deep green with madder root and trimmed with imported silk, marks your station as you stride through the bustling streets. The sword at your belt is more ceremonial than practical these days, its hilt inlaid with silver wire and intricate knotwork patterns that would have made your Viking ancestors proud. Your boots, crafted from the finest Cordovan leather, bear no trace of the mud that clings to the shoes of common folk. God's greeting, Lord Wulfric, calls a baker, pausing as he pulls fresh loaves from his oven. The rich smell of baking bread fills the narrow street. You nod in acknowledgement, noting how the man's accent has softened over the years. His grandfather likely spoke with the thick brogue of a Danish invader, but 3 generations in Wessex have made him English in speech and custom. The street beneath your feet tells its own story of progress. Where once there was only packed earth and mud, now there are proper cobblestones laid in careful patterns, with gutters to carry away rainwater and waste. The innovations of King Alfred's time, street planning, sanitation, fortifications, have borne fruit in Edgar's reign. You pause by the river Itchen, watching the watermill turn with steady purpose. This marvel of engineering, imported from Frankish lands, grinds grain with an efficiency that would astonish your grandfather's generation. 3 millers work in harmony, their movements practiced and precise. One adjusts the flow of water to the wheel, another feeds grain into the hopper, the third collects the fine flour that will become tomorrow's bread. Sheriff, a moment of your time. The voice belongs to Brother Alfred, the king's clerk, hurrying toward you with a wax tablet clutched in his hands. His tonsured head gleams in the morning light, and his robe, though simple wool, is of finer quality than what most monks wear. Edgar's court attracts the best minds from across Christendom, and Alfric is no exception, a scholar who can reckon sums in his head faster than most men can count on their fingers. The quarterly gamote begins at noon. He reminds you, though you need no reminding. The king wishes to review the shire's tax rolls beforehand. You nod, already mentally reviewing the figures. The system of taxation Edgar inherited from his forebears has grown more sophisticated with each passing year. No longer the haphazard tribute-taking of earlier times, but a carefully calibrated system that funds the kingdom's defenses, roads, and monasteries while leaving enough for the people to thrive. The records are in order, you assure him. Tell His Majesty we've collected 93 pounds of silver from Hampshire's mints this quarter, 3 more than last. Alfric's eyebrows rise. The new silver mine at Alton? The very same. The king's investment bears fruit. This exchange would have been unthinkable a century ago. A thane and a monk discussing mining ventures and min outputs with casual expertise. But Edgar's England thrives on such knowledge. The silver pennies struck at Winchester's mint, each bearing the king's likeness and worth its weight in silver, circulate from Dublin to Rome, their purity guaranteed by the crown. Your morning rounds take you past Winchester's growing commercial district. The shops here are more substantial than the temporary stalls of earlier times. Proper wooden buildings with shuttered windows that open to display their wares by day. A spice merchant from Venice shows off his precious cargo, cinnamon from the east, pepper from India, and other exotic flavors that would have been unimaginable luxuries in your grandfather's day. Sheriff Wulfric, come see what the Venetians have brought us this time. The voice belongs to Edgith, a merchant's widow who now runs her late husband's textile business with impressive acumen. Her shop displays bolts of fine linen from Flanders, wool from the Welsh marches, and, most precious of all, silks from Byzantium that shimmer like morning dew on a spider's web. You'll need new robes for the king's coronation, she observes with a merchant's eye for opportunity. This blue would suit you. It matches your lady's eyes. You smile at the transparent salesmanship. Edgar's planned coronation at Bath next summer is already the talk of the kingdom, an event meant to symbolize the unity of England under one crown. Thanes from Northumbria to Cornwall will attend, all dressed in their finest to honor the king who has brought them peace and prosperity. My lord sheriff, trouble at the docks. The shout comes from one of your deputies, a young thane named Leif Wine. His face is flushed from running. 2 merchant crews brawling over mooring rights. The Danes are threatening to burn the Frisians' ship. You sigh? Some things never change. The peace Edgar has forged is real, but old tensions still simmer beneath the surface. The Danes of Jorvik may swear allegiance to an English king now, but they still remember when their grandfathers ruled half the island. The scene at the docks is everything you feared. 24 armed and angry men shouting in a mix of English, Norse, and Frisian. The dispute, as near as you can tell, involves a prime docking spot and whose ancestors had rights to it in some bygone era. Enough. Your voice cuts through the chaos with the authority of a man used to being obeyed. By order of King Edgar, I'll have peace in this port. The crowd parts before you. Some of the Danes recognize you. You fought alongside their fathers against the Welsh border raiders last summer. That shared service counts for something, even between old enemies. The king's law is clear. You announce, standing between the two factions. Docking rights go to the first ship to arrive each morning. No exceptions. There are grumbles, but no outright defiance. Edgar's justice may be firm, but it's also fair. And more importantly, it's consistent from one end of England to the other. The days when local strongmen could make up their own rules are fading into memory. By the time the dispute is settled and the merchants have returned to their business, the sun is high in the sky. You make your way to the Great Hall, where the Shire's quarterly gamote will convene. The building itself is a testament to how far England has come. No longer the timber and thatch mead halls of legend, but a proper stone structure with glazed windows and a tiled roof. Inside, the hall is already filling with the leading men of Hampshire, thanes, priests, and the wealthier ceorls who represent the villages under your jurisdiction. At the far end, seated on a carved oak chair that is just shy of being a throne, waits King Edgar. At 25, Edgar is young for a king, but he carries himself with the assurance of a man born to rule. His tunic is of the finest English wool, dyed royal purple with imported mollusk shells. The golden circlet on his brow is a simpler version of the crown he'll wear at his coronation, a nod to humility before his subjects. Lord Wulfric, he greets you with a nod. I hear you've been keeping our docks peaceful this morning. You bow. As peaceful as Danes and Frisians ever are, my liege. Edgar smiles. Then you've done better than most. Come, let us begin. The gamote proceeds with the ordered formality that has become Edgar's hallmark. Each village reports its yields, grain, livestock, craft goods. The king's clerks record everything on parchment that will be added to the growing archives at Winchester. This is the machinery of state that Alfred began building and Edgar has perfected. A system where every shire, every hundred, every hide of land is accounted for and contributes to the kingdom's strength. When it's your turn to speak, you detail Hampshire's defenses, the repairs to Winchester's walls, the training of the FYRD, the beacon system that can warn of approaching danger. Edgar listens intently, asking sharp questions about costs and manpower. This is no ceremonial gathering. It's the working council of a kingdom that takes its security seriously. The afternoon wears on with petitions and disputes. A boundary quarrel between two villages is settled by referring to the Shire's charter. A dispute over inheritance is resolved according to the laws Edgar had codified last year. Through it all runs the unspoken truth. This is what peace looks like. Not the absence of conflict, but the presence of justice. As the gamote concludes, Edgar motions for you to join him in the private chamber behind the hall. The room is small but well appointed, with a table covered in maps and documents. A servant brings wine, fine red from Aquitaine, in glass goblets that would have been priceless treasures a century ago. I'm appointing you to the commission for the Bath coronation, Edgar says without preamble. You'll oversee the arrangements for the northern thanes. The significance isn't lost on you. The coronation isn't just a ceremony. It's a carefully staged demonstration of England's unity. Having a southern thane like you oversee the northern lords is a deliberate choice, meant to show that old divisions are truly healed. It will be done, my liege. Edgar studies his wine. Do you think they'll come? All of them. You know who he means. The great earls of Northumbria and East Anglia, whose grandfathers fought against Wessex, whose fathers swore grudging allegiance to Edgar's father. They'll come, you assure him. They may grumble, but they'll come. Your peace is too valuable to risk. And it's true. The England Edgar rules is wealthier, safer, and better ordered than any since the Romans left. The roads are patrolled, the coins are pure, the laws are fair. Viking raids still happen, but they are rare now, and met with swift, overwhelming force. As evening falls, you return to your house near the cathedral. It's a fine stone building with glazed windows and a proper chimney, luxuries your grandfather would have marveled at. Your wife Elfjifu greets you with a kiss and news of the household. Your eldest son, just returned from service in the king's household, has brought a young priest to tutor your younger children in Latin and mathematics. The evening meal is a quiet affair, just your family and a few trusted retainers. The food is simple but plentiful: fresh bread, river fish, spring greens, and a bit of the precious pepper you bought from the Venetian merchant. As you eat, your son recounts his time at court, the debates between scholars, the new poems being composed, the strange mechanical clock the king has imported from Germany. Later, in the quiet of your bedchamber, you reflect on how much has changed in your lifetime. The England of your youth was still a patchwork of rival kingdoms, its villages vulnerable to Viking raids, its laws varying from shire to shire. Now there is one law, one coinage, one kingdom stretching from the Scottish borders to the English Channel. The candlelight flickers over the pages of a book on your bedside table, a history of Alfred's wars, written by a monk at your commission. You trace the inked letters with a finger, marveling at how knowledge that once lived only in the memories of old men can now be preserved for generations unborn. Outside your window, Winchester sleeps in peace. The watchmen make their rounds with confidence, not fear. The monastery bells mark the hours with steady rhythm. The river flows on, as it has since Roman times, bearing witness to the latest chapter in England's long story. As sleep takes you, you think of the coronation to come, of the moment when Edgar will stand in the abbey at Bath and be crowned not as king of Wessex or Mercia or any one people, but as ruler of all England. And you know, with quiet certainty, that the work Alfred began and Edgar continues will outlive you all, that the England taking shape in these years will endure long after the last man who remembers the dark times has gone to his rest. The first frost of autumn glitters on the thatched roofs of Canterbury as dawn breaks over the cathedral towers. 6 centuries have passed since Rome abandoned Britain, and the island has been reborn through fire and faith. What was once a fractured land of warring tribes now stands united under the cross and crown. A kingdom where scholars debate philosophy in Latin while merchants trade in silver pennies bearing the king's image. The echoes of Viking war horns have faded into memory, replaced by the steady scratching of quills and scriptoria and the rhythmic hammering of mints striking coins. You are Athelwold, a Benedictine monk in your 35th year, serving as scribe to Archbishop Dunstan in this year of our Lord 973. Your day begins before the sun, as all proper days should, with the solemn chanting of matins in the cathedral's candlelit choir. The cold stone floor bites through your leather sandals as you stand with your brethren, your breath forming silver clouds in the pre-dawn air. The Latin psalms roll off your tongue with practiced ease, a language as familiar to you now as the Old English of your childhood. Your writing desk in the scriptorium awaits, a sturdy oak table scarred with ink stains and knife marks from generations of scribes. The tools of your trade are laid out with ritual precision. Quills from goose wings carefully trimmed, cakes of ink imported from Frankish lands, sheets of vellum scraped so thin they're nearly translucent. Today you will continue copying Bede's ecclesiastical history, a task that requires both spiritual devotion and physical endurance. Brother Athelwold, whispers Brother Osric as the service concludes, the Archbishop requests your presence in the library. You nod, your heart quickening. Dunstan rarely summons scribes personally unless there's work of particular importance. The library, a vaulted chamber adjoining the cathedral, holds more books than any other place in England, some rescued from Viking raids, others painstakingly copied right here in Canterbury. The Archbishop stands by a lectern, his sharp features illuminated by a shaft of morning light through the glazed window. At 74, Dunstan has outlived most of his contemporaries, his once black hair and beard now pure white, but his mind remains as keen as ever. Ah, Athelwold, he says without looking up from the parchment before him. Come examine this. The document is a letter from Rome, written in flawless Latin on fine Italian parchment. The papal seal, 2 crossed keys, hangs from it like a waxen medallion. The Holy Father confirms King Edgar's coronation rite, Dunstan explains. We are to anoint him in the Roman manner at Bath next Pentecost. You understand immediately why you've been summoned. As one of the few monks in England fluent enough in Latin to compose formal correspondence, you'll be drafting the Archbishop's reply. More importantly, you'll help prepare the illuminated manuscript containing the coronation order, a book that will become a sacred relic of the English crown. The king wishes the ceremony to unite all peoples of this island. Dunstan continues. Angles, Saxons, Danes, Britons, all must see themselves in this rite. This is no small task. Edgar's England is a tapestry of peoples who were killing each other within living memory. The coronation must speak to Northumbrians who still tell tales of Ragnar Lothbrok's sons, West Saxons who remember Alfred's desperate defenses, and Britons who cling to fragments of their ancient traditions. Back in the scriptorium, you prepare your materials with special care. The coronation book will require your finest vellum, calfskin scraped and polished until it's smooth as silk. The inks must be perfect, rich black from oak galls, vibrant red from crushed insects, precious gold leaf brought at great cost from the Rhineland. As you work, the scriptorium comes alive around you. 20 monks sit at writing desks, some copying scripture, others working on legal documents or medical texts. The sound of quills scratching parchment blends with the occasional murmured prayer or request for a fresh ink pot. This symphony of scholarship would have been unimaginable a century ago when Viking raids reduced England's monasteries to smoking ruins. Your hand cramps as you form the elaborate capitals that begin the coronation text. In nomine patris et filii et spiritus sancti. The Latin flows from your pen like a chant, each word measured and precise. This document will outlive you by centuries, will guide kings yet unborn in their sacred duties. At noon, the bell calls you to the refectory. The meal is simple but nourishing: barley bread, smoked fish from the monastery's ponds, cheese from its dairy, and weak ale. As you eat, you listen to Brother Alfred debate grammar with a young novice recently arrived from York. Their discussion, whether dais should take the masculine or neuter form in certain constructions, would have seemed frivolous to your warrior ancestors. But in Dunstan's England, such questions matter. After dinner, you walk in the cloister garden to rest your eyes and stretch your legs. The autumn air carries the scent of rosemary and late-blooming roses. Here, among the medicinal herbs and flowering plants, the monastery's infirmarian gathers remedies for the sick who come seeking help. Brother Athelwold. The call comes from a young lay brother who serves as the Archbishop's messenger. You're needed at the cathedral. A delegation from Ghent has arrived with gifts for the king's coronation. The cathedral nave is alive with activity when you arrive. A group of Flemish monks stand near the high altar, their travel-stained robes contrasting with the fine vestments of Canterbury's clergy. Between them rests an object covered with embroidered cloth. Dunstan lifts the covering with solemn ceremony, revealing a book unlike any you've seen before. The cover is solid oak overlaid with gold and ivory panels depicting Christ in majesty. When the Archbishop opens it, the pages seem to glow with their own light. Illuminations in colors so vivid they appear wet: lapis lazuli blue, vermilion red, malachite green. The Ghent Gospels, Dunstan announces, a gift from Count Arnulf to King Edgar, that he may swear his coronation oath upon it. You step closer, your scribe's eye drinking in the details. The script is Carolingian minuscule, clear, regular, and far easier to read than the insular hand you were trained in. The illuminations show Mediterranean influence, figures with depth and shadow that make your own work seem flat by comparison. This book is more than a gift, it's a challenge. The Continentals are showing England what true craftsmanship looks like. You glance at Dunstan and see the same realization in his eyes. England must rise to meet this standard. The afternoon passes in a blur of preparations. You're summoned to meetings with goldsmiths who will craft the coronation regalia, with musicians composing new chants for the ceremony, with tailors designing vestments that will rival anything in Rome or Constantinople. As evening falls, you return to your copying with renewed purpose. The coronation book must be perfect, not merely equal to the Flemish masterpiece, but surpassing it in English style. You mix fresh ink, adding a drop of precious gold powder to make it shimmer. Your quill moves with new confidence, forming letters that seem to dance across the vellum. When Compline bells finally call you to evening prayers, your back aches and your fingers are stained with ink, but your heart is light. This is why you became a scribe, to be part of something greater than yourself, to preserve wisdom and beauty for generations yet unborn. In the cathedral, the last service of the day unfolds with timeless solemnity. The chant rises and falls like ocean waves, the same psalms your predecessors sang when Augustine first brought Christianity to Kent 4 centuries ago. The candlelight flickers on stone walls that have withstood Viking torches and Saxon rebellions alike. After prayers, you walk one last time through the cloisters. The night air is crisp, carrying the scent of wood smoke from the monastery kitchens. Above you, the stars shine with cold clarity. The same stars that guided Roman galleys up the Thames, that watched over Alfred's guerrilla war in the marshes, that illuminated Edgar's birth. In your cell, you kneel for final devotions before the small wooden crucifix that hangs above your bed. The quiet is broken only by the occasional cough from a neighboring cell or the hoot of an owl in the cathedral rafters. As sleep claims you, your last waking thought is of the coronation book, of the words you pen today that will one day guide a king's hands as he takes the sacred oath. The England taking shape under Edgar and Dunstan is not the England of your ancestors, not the war-torn land of tribal kingdoms and Viking terror, but something new, a kingdom of laws and learning, of faith and commerce, where the sword and the quill are equally honored. And when that England faces its next great trial, as all kingdoms must, it will have your words, and the words of countless scribes like you, to light its way through the darkness. The first snow of winter dusts the cobbled streets of London like powdered sugar, muffling the sounds of carts and conversation. 7 centuries have passed since the last Roman legion sailed from Britain, and the island has been reforged through conquest and compromise. What was once Alfred's embattled kingdom now stretches from the Scottish marches to the English Channel, a realm where Norman knights swear fealty to Saxon kings, where Latin charters record English laws, and where stone cathedrals rise where pagan temples once stood. You are Godric, a burgess of London in your 45th year, watching from your timber-framed house as the city stirs to life beneath a leaden sky. The woolen cloak draped over your shoulders is lined with fox fur, a luxury your grandfather, a simple Searle tilling Wessex soil, could never have imagined. The silver brooch that fastens it bears the mark of a London silversmith, its intricate interlace patterns blending Norse and Saxon motifs. Down in the street, apprentices sweep shop fronts clear of snow while merchants unload goods from Flanders and Gascony. The docks are already bustling, though dawn has barely broken. Cargoes of wine, spices, and fine cloth arriving to feed London's growing appetite for luxury. The city has swelled in your lifetime, its wooden palisades replaced by stone walls, its muddy tracks paved with gravel and crushed shells. Father, the bailiff's come. Your son Algar's voice carries up the narrow staircase. At 16, he's already taller than you, his fair hair and blue eyes marking him as your kin, though his French-inflected speech betrays his upbringing in this new Norman order. You descend to the ground floor, where your warehouse and counting house occupy the space beneath your living quarters. The bailiff, a Norman named Guillaume, though the Londoners call him William, stands dripping melted snow onto the rush-strewn floor. The king's taxes are due by week's end, he announces in heavily accented English. He holds out a wax tablet bearing the royal seal, a lion rampant, symbol of the Plantagenet dynasty that now rules England. You take the tablet with a nod, though your jaw tightens. The sums recorded there are steep, higher than last year's, though trade has been good. Henry II's wars in France demand silver, and London's merchants must provide it. It will be done, you say, keeping your tone neutral. Guillaume eyes the stacks of wool bales waiting to be shipped to Flanders. Your business thrives, it seems. By God's grace and the king's peace, you reply automatically. The formula is both true and politic. London has prospered under Henry's strong rule, even as his taxes bite deep. After the bailiff departs, you cross to your counting table, where a ledger lies open. The numbers are recorded in neat Roman numerals. Your father taught you the skill before the Normans came, when such knowledge was rare among English merchants. Now your son learns Arabic numerals from a Jewish trader, the new system spreading through Europe like wildfire. Will we pay it all at once? Algar asks, peering over your shoulder. You shake your head. We'll pay 3/4 now and the rest after Candlemas when the Genoese payment comes. Cash flow is the merchant's eternal dance, silver moving in careful rhythms between debtors and creditors across Europe. The morning passes in a blur of activity. You inspect a shipment of Spanish iron, haggle with a Hanseatic trader over Baltic amber, and settle a dispute between two apprentices who came to blows over a misplaced tally stick. By midday, your fingers are stiff with cold despite the charcoal brazier burning in the corner of your counting house. Come, break your fast, urges your wife Edith, appearing with a tray of bread, cheese, and hot spiced wine. Her English is still pure despite 20 years of Norman rule. The rolling West Saxon vowels of your youth preserved in her speech like insects in amber. As you eat, she tells you of the latest gossip from the wharves, how a ship from Bordeaux nearly sank in a storm, how the price of pepper has risen again, how the bishop's men are cracking down on Sunday trading. This is the lifeblood of London, not just goods and silver, but information flowing through the city like water through a mill race. The afternoon brings a visitor you've been expecting, Hugh de Lusignan, a French knight turned wool broker. His cloak is trimmed with sable, his boots the finest Cordovan leather. 10 years ago, men like Hugh would have sneered at commerce. Now they embrace it, seeing the fortunes to be made in England's booming trade. Godric, my friend. His French is laced with the sing-song accent of Poitou. I bring news from the Champagne fairs. He produces a letter sealed with wax, the mark of a Flemish clothier seeking English wool. The terms are good, better than you'd hoped. The interdict in Flanders has depressed prices, but Hugh's connections have secured you premium rates. As you discuss terms, your mind wanders to the changes you've witnessed. When you were Algar's age, London was still a Saxon city in all but name, its guilds dominated by Englishmen, its laws rooted in Edward the Confessor's day. Now French is spoken in the markets alongside English and Flemish. Norman nobles build stone houses where Wattle and Daub once stood. The tower, that hated symbol of conquest, rises ever higher on the eastern horizon. Yet for all that, London endures. The Normans may rule, but the city's lifeblood still flows through English hands. Your grandfather's knowledge of wool grades and shipping routes is as valuable now as it was before Hastings. The city's customs, the folkmoot, the hustings court, the merchant laws, have survived conquest because they work. As evening falls, you walk with Algar to the Guildhall. The building is new, rebuilt in stone after a fire, but the institution it houses is ancient, tracing its roots to Saxon times. Tonight, the guild masters gather to discuss the king's latest demand for a loan to fund his campaign in Toulouse. The hall is warm and smoky, the air thick with the smell of wool and wine. The men gathered here represent London's power, English and Norman alike. Robert Fitzwalter, the Norman sheriff, presides from the high seat, but it's the English merchant Richard of Cornhill who does most of the talking. The king wants 2,000 marks, Richard announces, his voice cutting through the murmur of conversation, to be repaid from the next year's taxes. There are groans around the hall. Henry's debts are mounting, and his promises of repayment grow thin. But refusal is not an option. The king's goodwill is the foundation of London's liberties. We'll pay, says Robert Fitzwalter at last, but we'll want confirmation of our charter rights in return. This is the dance you've all learned. Silver for privileges, loans for liberties. The Norman kings may rule, but they need London's wealth, and that gives the city power. Walking home through snow-dusted streets, Algar asks the question that's been troubling him. Father, if the king needs so much silver, why doesn't he just take it? You pause beneath the overhanging eaves of a spice merchant's house, considering how to explain the delicate balance of power to a boy who's never known anything but Norman rule. Because kings need more than silver, you say at last. They need men to collect it, ships to carry it, laws to protect it. And for that, they need us. This is the lesson your father taught you after the conquest, when the world seemed turned upside down. The Normans brought new lords, new laws, new tongues, but they couldn't bring the rain to make crops grow or the wind to fill merchant sails. England endures because its people, Saxon and Norman alike, have learned to bend without breaking. Your house is warm when you return, the central hearth banked with glowing coals. Edith has laid out supper, fresh bread, a pottage of beans and salted pork, and a precious orange from Spain, bought at outrageous cost as a treat. As you eat, Algar recounts his day's lessons, the Latin declensions he's memorized, the abacus calculations he's mastered. His education is far broader than yours was at his age, a necessity in this new world where a merchant's son might need to treat with French nobles or Flemish bankers. Later, in the quiet of your bedchamber, you open the wooden chest where you keep your most precious possessions. Beneath the ledger books and deeds lies a relic of the old world, your father's Saxon sword, its blade still sharp despite decades of disuse. You run a finger along the intricate pattern welding, remembering how he hid it after Hastings, fearing confiscation. The weapon is obsolete now, no match for Norman steel, but you keep it as a reminder. London has survived Dane and Norman alike because its people adapt without forgetting who they are. Outside your window, the snow falls silently on a city that is neither Saxon nor Norman, but something new, something that will one day be called English. The river flows on as it has since Roman times, carrying ships and silver between England and the wider world. As sleep claims you, your last thought is of tomorrow's work, of shipments to arrange, debts to collect, and the endless dance of commerce that has made London great. The Normans may rule England, but in houses like yours, in guild halls and counting houses, the foundations of something greater are being laid, stone by stone, silver penny by silver penny. The bells of Westminster Abbey peal across London, their bronze voices rolling over rooftops where dawn light glints on lead and timber. 8 centuries have unspooled since Rome abandoned Britain, and the island stands transformed beyond imagining. What began as Alfred's desperate kingdom, then became Edgar's unified realm, then William's conquered territory, now thrives as a land where merchants trade wool for Venetian glass, where scholars debate Aristotle in Oxford's halls, where stone cathedrals pierce skies once shadowed by Viking sails. You are Thomas, a lawyer in your 50th year, striding through the thronged streets toward the great hall where Parliament convenes. Your robe, fine black wool trimmed with miniver, marks your profession, while the silver chain about your neck declares your position as recorder for the city of York. The cobbles beneath your boots are worn smooth by generations of feet. Saxon peasants, Norman knights, Flemish weavers, and now men like you who navigate the labyrinth of English common law. Make way for the king's justices. The shout comes from a herald clearing a path through the market crowds. You step aside as 3 mounted judges pass, their horses' hooves clattering on stone. These men administer the law that has grown from Alfred's Doom Book and Henry II Assizes, a system now so sophisticated it draws students from across Christendom to the Inns of Court. The smell of baking bread mixes with less pleasant odors as you pass the shambles, where butchers slaughter livestock in the open air. London has grown fat and crowded in your lifetime, its population swelling beyond the old Roman walls. The houses press shoulder to shoulder, their upper stories leaning so close across narrow lanes that neighbors could shake hands from opposite windows. Master Thomas. A word. The voice belongs to Robert de Bray, a wool merchant turned member of Parliament. His French is laced with Yorkshire vowels, a sign of how the old divisions between Norman and Saxon have blurred over generations. The commons meet after terce, he says, falling into step beside you. We mean to challenge the king's new tax on wool exports. You nod, mentally reviewing the arguments. Edward III wars in France drain England's coffers, but the wool trade is the realm's lifeblood. The merchants and lesser gentry who make up the commons grow bolder each year in asserting their rights. Have you seen the petition from Lincolnshire? Robert asks. You pat the leather satchel at your hip. Drafted it myself. The language is careful. We protest the tax, not the king's prerogative. This is the delicate dance of 14th century politics. The Plantagenets may rule by divine right, but even kings must heed the men who control England's wealth. The Magna Carta your ancestors extracted from King John a century ago continues to shape each new confrontation. Westminster Hall rises before you, a vast forest of oak beams and stone pillars where kings have held court since William Rufus built it 300 years past. The noise within is tremendous. Clerks scribbling on parchment, lawyers arguing points of law, petitioners clamoring for justice. The very air thrums with the energy of a nation coming into its own. You take your place at the clerk's table, arranging quills, ink, and parchment with practiced efficiency. Around you, the commons gather, knights of the shire in sturdy woolens, burgesses in finer cloth, a few wealthy merchants whose gold chains rival those of the nobility. They speak in a mix of French and English, the languages blending as seamlessly as the peoples themselves have over generations. When the chancellor enters, all rise. His scarlet robes blaze like fire against the hall's muted tones. The Parliament roll from last session is carried in with ceremony, its parchment sheet sewn end to end into a continuous scroll, a physical record of England's growing self-governance. My lords and gentlemen, the Chancellor begins in sonorous Latin before switching to French. We are met to consider the king's business and the realm's needs. The morning passes in a blur of procedure and debate. You record each speaker's points, your quill flying across the parchment in the clear hand you learned at Gray's Inn. The arguments grow heated when the wool tax is discussed, the merchants from eastern ports particularly vehement. Norwich cannot pay another penny, shouts one red-faced burgess in accented French. A knight from Kent responds in English. And who'll pay for Calais, if not the wool trade? Shall we let the French take our last foothold across the channel? You capture every word, your notes becoming the official record that will shape future laws. This is England's new way. Kings consulting with their subjects. Grievances aired openly rather than whispered in rebellion. At noon, the session breaks for dinner. You join a group of lawyers at a tavern near the Thames, where roasted capon and good Gascon wine fuel discussions of recent court cases. The talk turns to a curious matter from York, a dispute over whether a man can will his property to the church against his heir's wishes. Bracton's treatise settles it, argues John de Stratford, tapping his wine cup for emphasis. A man's last testament must be honored. You shake your head, but Glanville is clear. Primogeniture cannot be overturned, even by pious intent. This is the intellectual ferment that marks your age. Legal scholars poring over centuries of precedents, forging a system of common law that will outlast kingdoms. The Inns of Court have become England's third great university, alongside Oxford and Cambridge, training men who serve both God and Mammon with equal devotion. Returning to Parliament after dinner, you pass the ongoing construction of St. Stephen's Chapel, a jewel of perpendicular Gothic that will serve as the Commons' permanent home. The masons' hammers ring like bells as they shape stone into traceried windows that will filter heaven's light onto England's lawmakers. The afternoon session concerns a more mundane matter, regulating the quality of wool exports. The merchants want strict standards to protect England's reputation abroad. The smaller producers argue this will drive them to ruin. You record the debate with equal care, knowing that today's arguments may become tomorrow's statutes. As evening falls, Parliament adjourns. You walk along the Thames toward your lodgings, the river alive with barges and wherries carrying goods and passengers. The water reflects the first stars appearing in a violet sky, the same stars that guided Caesar's galleys and Alfred's warships, now watching over a new kind of England. Your rooms in the Temple are small but comfortable, the quarters of a successful but not extravagant lawyer. The shelves hold your prized possessions, law books copied at great expense, a volume of Chaucer's recent poetry, a beautifully illuminated psalter from York Minster. You light a candle against the gathering dark and set to work transcribing your notes into a fair copy. The flickering light dances across the parchment as your quill transforms hurried notes into polished Latin. This record will join the growing archive of Parliament rolls, each one a thread in the tapestry of English law. As you work, your mind wanders through the centuries you've studied but never lived. The Rome that abandoned Britain seems as distant as Babylon now. The Viking terror that haunted your ancestors exists only in monks' chronicles and old wives' tales. Even the Norman conquest that reshaped England is fading into legend. What remains is the law, the great chain of precedent stretching back to Alfred, forward to whatever future awaits. The common law you serve is neither Saxon nor Norman, but something new forged from both, just as the English language itself has become, blending old roots with new growth. Outside your window, the stars brighten over a London that would astonish any of your forebears. The city's skyline bristles with church spires and the skeletal frames of new construction. The river teems with commerce from a dozen lands. The air hums with the energy of a people coming into their own. As sleep finally claims you, your last waking thought is of the Parliament roll you'll deliver tomorrow, another link in the chain that binds England to its past and guides it toward its future. The dark ages your ancestors endured have given way to an age of light, not because some outside force bestowed it, but because generations of ordinary people built it stone by stone, law by law, word by word. And when the next great trial comes, as come it must, England will face it not as a conquered province or a fractured collection of tribes, but as a nation shaped by all the centuries that came before: Roman discipline, Saxon wit, Viking daring, Norman ambition, and above all, the stubborn persistence of ordinary folk who refuse to let the light go out. The candle burns low as sleep takes you. Somewhere in the city, a watchman calls the hour. The Thames flows on to the sea, carrying London's hopes and memories toward distant shores. And the great clock of history ticks forward, its face illuminated by the accumulated wisdom of 800 winters, each darker than the last, yet each leading inexorably toward the dawn.